When your children don't respect you, do this instead. 6 powerful ways to regain respect. Senior. There comes a point in every parent's life when the dynamics of the relationship with their children begin to shift. For years, you've poured your heart and soul into raising them, offering guidance, making sacrifices, and prioritizing their needs above all else. You've been the steady hand, the guiding light, the provider of comfort and security. But then, one day, you notice a subtle, or perhaps not so subtle, change. Your advice is met with a shrug, your opinions are dismissed, and sometimes you might even feel like you're being talked down to, or worse, made to feel like a burden. This shift can be incredibly painful, stirring up feelings of frustration, hurt, and even anger. It's natural to want to remind them of all you've done, of the countless hours you spent putting them first, of the dreams you may have put on hold for their sake. However, succumbing to anger or resentment is rarely the solution. In fact, it often exacerbates the situation, creating further distance rather than fostering understanding. There is a more constructive and effective path to regaining the respect you deserve, one that bypasses arguments and resentment. This video explores 6 powerful strategies, simple yet profound shifts in your own responses that can fundamentally alter how your children perceive and treat you. Some of these approaches might seem counterintuitive at first, but by the end, you'll discover how to reestablish yourself as a valued and respected presence in their lives. The first crucial action to take when your children seem to lack respect is to stop chasing their approval. A common pitfall for parents, especially as they age, is an overzealous pursuit of their children's validation. You might find yourself going to great lengths to accommodate them, agreeing when your instinct is to disagree, and consistently placing their needs before your own, all in the hope that your efforts will be recognized and appreciated. The difficult truth, however, is that the more desperately you seek their approval, the less likely you are to receive genuine respect. Respect isn't cultivated through constant self-sacrifice or by always being agreeable. It's rooted in self-respect. When you habitually bend over backward, concede to their demands, or prioritize maintaining a superficial peace above all else, you inadvertently communicate that your own feelings and needs are secondary. This subtle message can lead them to take you for granted. Consider the story of Margaret, a woman who, in her youth, was strong and independent. As she grew older, she began to defer all major decisions to her children, meticulously rearranging her schedule to suit their needs, suppressing her own opinions, and even tolerating their condescending tones. Her justification was a desire to keep the family together, but the unintended consequence was that her children began to devalue her. They perceived her as someone who would always adapt, always agree, and always remain silent. She believed she was preserving harmony, but in reality, she was losing her voice and her influence. If your children are exhibiting a lack of respect, the initial step isn't to demand it, but to cease acting as if you are in need of it. Establish clear boundaries, learn to say no when necessary, and voice your opinions even if they might not be met with universal agreement. The moment you begin to demonstrate self-respect, your children will perceive you differently, and in time, that respect will likely be reciprocated. The second vital strategy is to don't argue, lead by example. When your children dismiss your insights, interrupt your thoughts, or generally treat you with a lack of deference, your immediate impulse might be to engage in a debate, to recount your past contributions, or to demand their attention. However, this approach will likely lead to years of frustration. Arguing is rarely an effective means of earning respect. Reflect for a moment. When has a heated debate ever truly convinced someone to respect you? Respect is not won through verbal jousting. It's earned through your demeanor, your self-possession, and your measured responses when faced with challenging behavior. Responding to disrespect with anger only serves to reinforce their perception of having power over you. Take the example of Frank, a retired teacher who had spent his career confidently leading a classroom. At home, however, his grown children had started treating him as if he were an afterthought, disregarding his advice advice, dismissing his concerns, and sometimes even mocking his attempts to offer correction. Initially, Frank retaliated with arguments, trying to reassert his worthiness of their respect. Yet the more he fought, the more their behavior deteriorated. Then, Frank shifted his approach. Instead of arguing, he began to truly listen. He stopped actively seeking respect through words and instead adopted an aura of quiet confidence, embodying a man who already possessed it. He communicated with calmness and wisdom without the need to win any point. Gradually, his children began to notice this transformation. They saw a man who was not desperate for their validation, who did not feel the need to prove himself, but who simply exuded strength. If your children are not showing you the respect you deserve, don't engage in a battle for it. Instead, demonstrate what respect looks like through your own conduct. Maintain your dignity, speak with self-assurance, and crucially, never stoop to their level. When you hold your ground with grace, they will sense it, and over time, they will be inclined to follow your lead. A third critical area to address is to withdraw your emotional dependence. One of the more challenging lessons to assimilate as one progresses through life is the understanding that you cannot solely rely on your children for emotional fulfillment. While the love for your children is profound and the desire for their love and respect in return is natural, the moment they perceive your need for their validation, the power dynamic shifts unfavorably. The reality is that individuals, including your own children, tend to respect those who exhibit emotional independence. When you lean on them heavily for affirmation, affection, or constant attention, it can create an undue pressure. Rather than fostering gratitude, this reliance may lead them to feel burdened. Consequently, they might withdraw, exhibit impatience, or even irritation. The more you pursue their affection, the less freely it may be given. Consider Helen's experience. A devoted mother, she had dedicated herself entirely to her children. As they grew and became engrossed in their own lives, she found herself anxiously awaiting their calls, often initiating contact herself, sometimes too frequently. She would express how much she missed them and her desire for more frequent visits. However, this approach, rather than drawing them closer, had the opposite effect. Their calls began to feel like an obligation, rather than a welcomed connection. Then, Helen made a conscious decision to change. She stopped waiting by the phone and reframed her focus towards herself. She rediscovered old hobbies, reconnected with friends, and prioritized her own happiness. The surprising outcome was that her children began to initiate contact more frequently. They became curious about her life and activities and began to admire her independence. They started to recognize her as someone with a rich and fulfilling life of her own. The underlying principle here is straightforward. The less you depend on your children to make you feel significant, the more they will begin to value your presence. When you demonstrate your ability to stand strong on your own, they will develop respect for you not out of obligation, but from genuine admiration for the life you have cultivated. The fourth essential action is to set boundaries and enforce them. A significant factor contributing to children's erosion of respect for their parents is parental allowance. If you permit your children to speak disrespectfully, disregard your opinions, or treat your time and emotions as inconsequential, they will likely continue this behavior. This is not necessarily indicative of malice on their part, but rather a reflection of the established pattern of interaction. Individuals, particularly within family units, often treat you according to the boundaries you permit. Establishing boundaries does not equate to severing ties or engendering conflict. Instead, it involves calmly and firmly articulating the behaviors you find acceptable and those you will not tolerate, and crucially, upholding these boundaries when they are transgressed. Robert, a retired businessman who had a history of disciplined leadership in his professional life, found himself struggling to assert himself with his adult children. They would interrupt him, dismiss his concerns, and even offer unsolicited criticism of his lifestyle. Initially, he acquiesced, telling himself it wasn't worth the confrontation. However, with each instance of silence, he was inadvertently teaching them that their behavior was acceptable. One day, Robert decided to alter his approach. When his son interrupted him, Robert calmly stated, "I will continue speaking when you are ready to listen." When his daughter dismissed his opinion, he simply responded, "You are not obligated to agree with me, but I expect you to respect my perspective." When they continued to push his limits, he made it clear that if they could not treat him with basic civility, he would limit their time together. The result? They began to listen. While there was initial resistance, they eventually realized their father was unwavering in his stance. They observed that he valued himself enough to demand respect, and consequently, they started to accord him that respect. If your children are not showing you the respect you deserve, it is imperative to ask yourself if you are permitting this behavior. Without firm boundaries, they will not establish them for you, and if you do not advocate for yourself, others will not do so on your behalf. A fifth potent tactic is to stop giving without appreciation. One of the most rapid pathways to losing respect is to persistently offer your resources, be it time, energy, or support, to individuals who do not acknowledge or appreciate these gestures. As parents, this is a pattern we often fall into, providing assistance even when it goes unrecognized, taken for granted, or is met with a sense of entitlement. The undeniable truth is that when you offer your resources to someone who fails to appreciate them, you do not foster love or respect. You cultivate expectation. They begin to view your kindness not as a generous gift, but as an inherent right. The moment you cease these offerings, they may not feel gratitude, but rather inconvenience. Consider George, a father who consistently demonstrated generosity towards his children. He readily provided financial assistance, dropped everything to help them, and even reshaped his life to accommodate their needs. However, instead of gratitude, he was met with complaints and a sense of entitlement, with expectations for more. Tragically, when George himself required assistance, his children were preoccupied. Then, George made a decisive change. He stopped overextending himself, ceased offering help preemptively, and crucially, learned to say no when necessary. Initially, his children expressed frustration, bewildered by his newfound reluctance to readily accommodate them. However, over time, a subtle shift occurred. They began to value his time and appreciate his contributions, realizing that his generosity was not an unlimited resource, but a precious gift, not an entitlement. If you feel your children are not respecting your time, effort, or kindness, it's time to pause and evaluate. Are you giving more than is warranted? What might be the consequences of reducing these offerings? When you communicate that your generosity is contingent upon their respectful appreciation, they will begin to treat it accordingly. The sixth and final powerful action is to build a life outside of them. One of the most impactful ways to regain your children's respect is to demonstrate that your happiness and sense of purpose are not solely contingent upon them. It is natural for parents to dedicate themselves to their children, making them the focal point of their existence. However, as life progresses, this dynamic inevitably evolves. If you have consistently prioritized them above all else throughout your life, they may begin to perceive you as someone with no independent pursuits or interests. Individuals tend to respect those who possess their own aspirations, passions, and a sense of fulfillment. If your children observe that you rely on them for entertainment, validation, or meaning, they might feel overwhelmed, or more concerningly, perceive you as having a life devoid of independent substance. Eleanor, a widow in her late 70s after her husband's passing, poured all her energy into her children's lives. She constantly checked in, offered unsolicited advice, and implicitly expected them to fill the void left by her husband. Paradoxically, this did not draw them closer. It pushed them away. Their visits became less frequent, their calls shorter, leaving Eleanor feeling increasingly isolated. Then she made a conscious choice to redefine her existence. She joined a book club, embarked on travels with friends, and volunteered at a local community center. She deliberately shifted her focus away from making her children the absolute center of her world. The remarkable consequence was that her children began to reach out more. They expressed curiosity about her new activities and admired her newfound independence and vitality. They began to respect her in a way they hadn't before. If your children are not demonstrating the respect you desire, ask yourself, do they see you as someone living a full and meaningful life, or as someone passively awaiting their attention? When you reveal that you are actively living rather than merely existing, they will perceive you through an entirely new lens. In conclusion, respect from your children is not something that can be demanded. It is something that is inspired through your demeanor, the boundaries you establish, and the way you choose to live your life. If you've noticed a decline in their consideration, care, or respect, redirect your energy away from anger and towards a strategic shift in your approach. Cease the pursuit of their approval, for the less you seem to need it, the more they are likely to offer it. Lead by example, as your inherent dignity speaks more profoundly than any verbal argument. Withdraw your emotional dependence, recognizing that your self-sufficiency garners greater respect for your presence. Set firm boundaries, understanding that people will treat you according to the standards you permit. Stop giving without appreciation, for when generosity is taken for granted, its inherent value diminishes. Most importantly, cultivate a vibrant life, independent of them, because individuals naturally respect those who possess their own distinct purpose, joy, and sense of self. By implementing these strategies, a remarkable transformation will occur. Your children will begin to see you not as someone waiting for their attention, but as an individual who commands respect simply by virtue of who you are. In time, that respect will return, not because you demanded it, but because you have genuinely earned it. Thank you for joining us today. We deeply value your engagement and would be delighted to hear from you. Please share in the comments below one key takeaway from this video and how you intend to integrate it into your life. Your perspectives are immensely important to us, so do not hesitate to share them. Reading your comments provides us with significant motivation and encouragement. If you found this video beneficial and insightful, please show your support by liking, subscribing, and sharing it with others. Your engagement helps us continue to produce valuable content that informs and inspires. We look forward to your presence in our next video.